Hi everyone, Alexandra Joe at Jupiter Returns here, and in this video I'm going to be talking you through the second half of 2020, the astrology of July through to December. What we're going to be specifically concentrating on though is the transit of Mars. Mars is going to be going through the sign of Aries, his home sign, so very strongly placed there. And Mars is going to be going retrograde. So this particular video is just going to be specifically concentrating on that specific transit. And there's going to be some important key dates for you. So grab your diary or pen and paper. If you've got your chart to hand, I mean, if you're familiar with your chart, great. If you've got it to hand, or maybe on your phone or something like that, or a print off, that's also going to be really useful just for you to check what planets of yours might get kind of pulled into the situation as well. But I am going to be giving you some quite important dates as we go through this whole 6-month period coming up. So if you need to, just pause the video now and get the stuff that you need, get your chart in front of you, and then restart and we can crack on. So today is June the 27th, 2020, and we are just completing, as I speak, in fact, Mars's journey through the sign of Pisces. So that's just coming to a close in the coming few hours, actually. At 6 o'clock in the morning UK time, June the 28th, then Mars will ingress into Aries. This is important for two reasons. Firstly, I find that if you're going to be having a profound transit, then I find that it's not just when those aspects form, but often things can suddenly come into your awareness when the planet ingresses the sign that that's going to take place in. So if you've been feeling a little bit stirred up in the last couple of days, and certainly as we move into tomorrow, then that could be the reason why. It could be a foretelling that perhaps you're likely to be having quite a profound experience with this Mars transit. The other important aspect about this particular degree, 0 degrees of Aries, the very first degree of each of the signs is 0 degrees. When it's the cardinal signs, this is even more sensitive than 0 degrees of the other signs. This creates what's known as the world axis. So this is 0 degrees of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. They make this grand cross that go through the whole of the center of the zodiac. And it's said that when things happen on those degrees, it tends to have a more profound effect out there in the world. So it's a very sensitive point in the chart. And this is Mars coming home. This is Mars returning to his own sign. Mars rules the sign of Aries. So very strong there, very comfortable there, far more so than in the sign of Pisces. And so that we're likely to feel that stimulation, that like a return of our mojo in a way. You know, Mars really is the mojo. Mars in astrology rules, it's very primal energy. It's the very kind of basic hunter-gatherer, quite primitive, quite survival kind of energy. It's what makes us defend ourselves. It's what makes us go out there and get things done. Yeah, really, really energizing and motivating. And it wants to make us take some kind of action. It's a very active planet, you know, and it's a very physical. It's kind of the masculine principle in all of us, whether we be male or female. And so it's really asking us to make something happen. It's very willful. It's, I want this, so I'm going to go out there and make it happen. You know, and that's great. We really, really need that. Otherwise, we'd all just kind of, you know, laze around all day long. We need that get up and go. But as with everything, we need balance. We need to get the balance right between being motivated and assertive and wanting to take action, and not being too pushy, not being too aggressive, not being too kind of willful. So this can be a challenging time in Mars's cycle, when we are kind of what we want, and what the universe wants for us, or what the world is feeding back to us, might be at odds with each other. And that's why it's going to be really important for you to listen to this, to watch this video, and just take a note of all of the different stages and the key dates involved. So overnight, we have the Mars ingress into Aries. This might awaken some of those planets. If you have planets or angles or points in Aries, then this may well kind of awaken them. They're going to feel, oh, Mars is here, Mars is home, things are going to happen, all right, and start to get juiced up a bit. So let's take it stage by stage. As you may already be aware, there are really essentially 3 phases to the retrograde itself. There's the phase where the planet's still going direct, so moving through Aries. Then the retrograde itself is when the planet then recovers that area of the chart, moving backwards. And then the 3rd phase, the post-retrograde shadow, where the planet moves forward again. So I'm going to cover precisely what's likely to happen in each of those and give you the key dates involved in them. So where we find ourselves actually at this precise moment in time is we have Mars is creating a really nice sextile aspect to the planet Saturn. So this is a really nice start to the transit, because wherever Mars goes in our chart, whatever house he's entering in your chart, that's where our attention is going to be drawn, in terms of this is where we want to make something happen. Okay, this is where we're feeling really energized and motivated and stimulated to make things happen. And when we have this lovely connection with Saturn, that can give a more lasting and enduring quality to Mars's efforts. When Saturn's involved, it can just say, oh, okay, yeah, this is going to really, really work out for the long term. It kind of just cools some of Mars's hot-headedness down a little bit and just tempers it into being a little bit more practical and realistic and grounded. Mars is a fire planet, you know, it's in a fiery sign. He wants things to happen fast. He wants things to happen now. He doesn't want to hang around. And, you know, this is one of the things that we really have to learn to work with Mars, is just learning to pace a little bit. And we're going to have potentially difficult lessons around that if we don't, you know, willingly engage in pacing our own motivation a little bit. We're going to be forced into that situation. So I love that right out of the gate, with Mars starting the journey through Aries, we have this lovely sextile to Saturn over there in Aquarius. At the moment, Mars has been playing out in terms of the eclipses. We've had the eclipses taking place. They're switching between the axis of Capricorn and Cancer and moving into Sagittarius and Gemini currently. And so we can kind of see with the square aspect that we have there, Mars has been a real feature of the astrology that's been happening lately. And we've experienced this, you know, the violence, the call to action, the call to defend. These are all, you know, things that we've seen in the news a lot, you know, the more desirable qualities of Mars in terms of really making people want to take some action, make something happen, deal with a situation that's been left to flounder for too long. That's really, really great. We've seen lots of movements in terms of defending other people. So Mars in Pisces, we've seen this kind of defending people that can't defend themselves quite so well. But then we've seen the downside as well. We've seen very impulsive, rash behavior, where people are very selfish. not really thinking longer term, just living in the moment, living for that instant hit of pleasure and desire and getting what they want. And also the violence. Mars is aggressive. It rules sharp things, blades, knives, lots of stabbings. It also rules heat, flames, burning, these kinds of things, hot-headedness in general, fiery passions erupting. And coming back to the sign of Aries, this is the real kind of egoic territory. We all have Aries in our chart somewhere. We all have to have a well-developed sense of self. We all need to put ourselves first some of the time. And we need to have a clear sense of our own identity. These are all the things that Aries rules. So with Mars back here, these are the themes that we're going to be dealing with. My physical presence, not that the spiritual presence is Pisces, but this is where the spirit, the soul enters the physical body and takes on the human form, this very, tangible flesh suit that we're all walking around in. So it's very, very personal. Things get very egoic and very personal in Aries. So we can anticipate that there's going to be a flaring of ego. And again, this will depend on your starting point. Do you need a little bit more help to do that? Do you actually need to be more assertive? Do you need to put yourself first a little bit more? In which case, this is going to be great. Or are you someone that's perhaps already got plenty of confidence? Thank you very much. And maybe this might tip you into being overly egoic, overly pushy, overly competitive, overly aggressive. So these are the two sides that we're really trying to navigate as we move through this transit. So the first of the 3 stages of the Mars retrograde then are going to take place once Mars gets to the 15th degree of Aries. So take a look in your chart. If you've got any angles or planets or points around 15 degrees of Aries, they are going to be, that's a real powerful degree in this situation. Mars will be coming back to this point with the retrograde, and so it's going to get a lot of Mars's attention. This is also going to flare up, it's going to sensitize if you have planets around that degree in the other, let's just move these guys out of the way for now, in any of the other cardinal signs, okay? So Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, all right? If you've got planets from the 15th degree of those signs, that's where the action is going to start to get stimulated and woken up. They're going to be really, really profoundly affected by this. So Mars arrives at 15 degrees of Aries on July the 5th. Sorry, the 25th, sorry. July the 25th, 15 degrees of Aries. That's when this whole process really starts. So this is the pre-shadow phase of the retrograde. This is basically waking things up and saying, any issues that happen from this point onwards before Mars goes retrograde, these are the things that are going to be revisited, okay? These are the things that we're really going to have to address, whether we really want to or not. So we've got a bit of, time before then just to really prepare ourselves, and I'll have some hints and tips on how we can do that and the kinds of things that we can expect that might show up as well. So the first key aspect that Mars is going to make will be when Mars gets to around about 19 degrees of Aries. This will be on August the 3rd, and this is going to be making an aspect with Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is going to be in retrograde at this point still. those of you who are aware of the astrology of 2020 or have been following me for a little while will know that, you know, we've had a lot going on in Capricorn, and this is a really important chapter of that story, essentially. This deep, lasting work, the crisis that we find ourselves in terms of the structure, the very fabric of our society. This is another very important part of that. So the first aspect really that pulls into that story is the square aspect between Jupiter and Mars there. So this is a pre-shadow Mars with a retrograde Jupiter, and that's taking place 19 degrees of Aries. So Jupiter at this point is in retrograde, not super happy in Capricorn, as I've covered in the past, doesn't tend to give us its best expression there. Jupiter tends to expand things, magnify things, make things appear larger than potentially they are. When we have a square aspect like this, it can actually just make us feel a lot more energized. You know, Mars being our mojo and our energy, we might go a bit overboard in terms of our optimism, in terms of what we think we might be capable of doing, or how much energy that we have to spend. So this could be a time when we could get ourselves into a burnout situation quite easily, because we can just, you know, really think that we've got more energy than we have. It can also obviously inflate the ego, inflate the desire to assert oneself. So any of the issues that we have going on with Mars, which is going to be particular for you and the area of life that Aries covers in your chart, this is where things are going to be magnified, okay? Jupiter can also create issues around legal matters. So any legal matters that have been kind of rumbling along in the background, issues that may have started around springtime of this year might now come back up again to be revisited with the planets in Capricorn now going retrograde, and then being kind of provoked and really brought to a head point with this Mars activity that's going on there. So those are the things really to watch out for. Could also be conflict around politics. Jupiter would rule politics. It could be issues with a teacher or someone in your life who you're learning from, or a higher education type situation. There could be issues around that time with students, with teachers, that kind of thing, strike action perhaps, that kind of thing going on, anything to do with the higher education, and also with long distance travel. This could be another one of those flashpoints where there might be issues arising with regards to long distance holidays and travel in general. So then what's going to happen is Mars will continue the pre-shadow phase, move on. When Mars gets to 23 degrees of Aries, okay, at August the 13th, the square aspect that he's then going to be making is going to be with a retrograde Pluto. So this is some really, really potent energy. Essentially, Pluto is like a very, very intense version of Mars. It's like a heightened, souped up steroids version of Mars, okay? This is energy that stops at nothing to make change happen. You know, this is real death and rebirth territory with Pluto. It's the ruler of Scorpio. So this is very, very potent transformation. And this is, you know, what we've been really dealing with Pluto's transit through Capricorn, saying, you know, there are aspects of our society, of the structure that we're a part of, that really are in desperate need of change, of deep, deep, lasting transformation. And this is one of the core aspects of this Mars retrograde, as far as I'm concerned, is what part the individual plays in that structure. Mars, Aries, this is me. This is the individual. This is I. And we can't just kind of go, it's all the fault of the politicians. It's all the fault of, you know, the people that came before us, expressing all our need for change, our need for action, our anger, our, you know, all of these emotions, all these passions. We have to start to take responsibility for the change in terms of what part we are going to play in it. And this is going to bring those feelings to a head, really. I need to do something. You know, what have I not done? What have I done? What can I do? These are going to be some really powerful questions, and we'll revisit those at the end. So this is going to be a very profound moment in this process as well. And shortly after that, Mars will move on to 26 degrees of Aries. And at this point, Saturn will have gone back into Capricorn, all right? So these guys are all ganging up again, just like they were at the beginning of the year when the crisis started. And Mars will now be squaring Saturn, okay? Loosely squaring all three for the whole of the time, but these dates that I'm giving you are the very pinpoint exact moments of when it's going to be, you know, precise. So Mars in square to Saturn, there's a couple of aspects with this. It's going to be this conflict point. It's going to be stirring up some real triggers between the individual wants, and the restrictions. Saturn is the authority figure, the father figure, the policeman. He's the guy that says, no, you can't do that. That's against the rules. He is discipline. And Mars doesn't want discipline. Mars says, no, I want this. I'm going to have it. Thank you very much. And I'm going to have it now. And you're not going to get in my way. So when these two fight, you know, we've seen a little bit of this already. We've got, you know, the individual potentially attacking the authority figure, and the authority figure being put in a position where it has to manage very hot situations. Things flare up very quickly with Mars. You know, things can change just like that. You know, a seemingly calm situation can just erupt seemingly out of nowhere. And so this is going to be a huge challenge for the authorities to be able to cope with very kind of inflammatory, incendiary kind of moods and events that are going to be taking place. This is also really a call for us to own our stuff. You know, this is as personal as it gets. With Mars and Aries, that's as much about you, the individual, as there can be, really. With Saturn, it's saying, what are your responsibilities? What are your duties? You know, you can't have everything you want because you are part of a community. You're part of a system. You're part of a structure. This is civilization, you know, and it might not be how we'd all like it to be right now. You know, there's a lot that's not so great about it right now, but like it or not, we're here, we're part of that, and we have to take responsibility for how we're showing up in that. Are we a force for good within that system? Are we a force for not so good? Do we take action that assists making that better, where we can identify that there are areas that we're not so comfortable with? Or do we just stand aside and say, well, that's nothing to do with me, I'm not going to get involved? You know, are we enabling some of the pervasive issues that we've had with our society that come back time and time and time again? Take, for example, the race argument, this situation that we've had in America with the death of George Floyd. You know, how many times do we have to revisit this exact same situation before action is taken? You know, and when we stand back and we don't take action, that is, in a sense, taking action. It's taking the action to not do something, to allow something to flourish, despite us knowing that it's wrong. And I think this Mars square Saturn is really going to be getting us to own our stuff and to own our part in the structure, and to really be responsible for the actions that we do or don't take. So that's the Mars square Saturn. Shortly afterwards then, Mars arrives towards the very end of Aries, 28 degrees of Aries, and this is where Mars stations retrograde. So September the 9th or 10th, Mars is going to station retrograde, okay? So we'll change him to red, the red planet. Okay, so the station point, 28 degrees, when a planet stations either to go retrograde or to go direct, they hang around that degree for quite a few days. So that particular degree is going to be very, very, very worked on. If you've got any planets, angles or points around the 28th degree of Aries, or the other cardinal signs, as I've said, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, that's really going to get a lot of work, okay? Mars wants to go forward. Mars has been moving through this area of your chart, whatever house Aries occupies in your chart. It's been saying, I want to make something happen here. I want to push forward in life. I feel really excited and stimulated. Mars then stationing retrograde is kind of like, it can play out two ways, one of two ways. You will either feel like you've completely lost your mojo with whatever that is, and you just really feel like, oh, do you know what, I can't be bothered with it anymore. I've just really lost the will with it. More often what I see happening, or perhaps it's just me because Mars is my ruling planet, Mars just feels massively frustrated. So you'll be trying to push ahead in an area of life, you know, wherever Mars is aspecting in your chart, and then the retrograde comes along and everything just grinds to a halt, and it feels like, you know, it takes 3 times the effort to move forward in whatever that area is. Like everything gets in your way and you just feel like slowed down, and you don't want to be. It's like, I'm being so held back here. Nothing is going forward. So, you know, make sure you're aware from that date that really, if you're trying to push forward with something, if you're trying to make something happen, it's probably going to get frustrated and held back, okay, from between that point and until Mars goes direct again. So that's the station retrograde on September the 9th or 10th, and that's at 28 degrees of Aries. When there's an excess of frustrated Mars energy around, people are going to possibly be taking their frustrations out on the people around them. People are going to be acting in a more aggressive, we're likely to see more of the downsides of Mars, essentially. So watch out for that. You know, Mars causes accidents. You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. Mars, you know, can cause, you know, things that we don't really want to happen. Accidents, car accidents, because it rules mechanical things, it rules cars. and machines. You know, if you're a machine operator, take extra care. Anything to do with knives and blades and sharp instruments, and that does include surgery. Mars retrograde is really not a great time to consider having surgery done if you can help it. It's not a great time to be too close, or you want to be careful if you're involved with flames, with fire, with heat, those kinds of things. And certainly I would anticipate challenges from other people if this is hitting your chart quite a bit. Competition is essentially what the issue is that's behind that. You know, the Mars needs to be number one. He needs to be the winner. He's gonna, you know, race forward and beat everyone else. And that's kind of the energy that's going to be around us. So, you know, impulsive, not really thinking, rash, hasty decisions. Really watch out for all of this, not only in yourself, but in other people. By this point, you will have had the kind of the stirring, the wake up, as Mars has gone through during the pre-shadow phase. Then that should have brought to your attention anything that's going to get, you know, really churned over when he goes backwards. So that's why it's really important to just pay attention to the pre-shadow. It's just that forewarning for you. So once Mars has gone retrograde, then when he gets back to 25 degrees of Aries, he is once more going to square with Saturn. Okay, this is going to be more potent this time for two reasons. Firstly, because it's the retrograde this time, so this is Mars really churning over that, really stirring things up. But also at this point, Saturn itself is stationing direct. So the 25th degree of Capricorn is the degree where Saturn's going to be stationing. So that's a really powerful degree as well. So this particular square between Mars and Saturn is one that I feel is going to most likely give us a lot of action. This is where we're going to see a lot of the astrology play out. So that is September the 28th, okay, at 25 degrees of Aries. And of course, each week I'll be here to give you the weekly forecast, and we'll be looking at what else is going on in the chart that might be also adding into that as well. But for the purposes of this video, I just want to focus on the key dates with Mars itself. The next aspect then, as Mars continues to recover its steps in Aries, that's when Mars gets to 22 degrees of Aries and once more is going to be stationing, squaring Pluto. And this time Pluto also is direct. So we've got a real change of situation here. Okay, we had Mars direct and Pluto retrograde, and this time we've got Mars retrograde and Pluto direct, so they're kind of changing over. So again, it's going to be that really deep, powerful, core level transformation, death and rebirth. You know, what are the areas in your chart that are being activated? And it really is a powerful call for you to do some deep inner work at this time. Excuse me, 21 degrees of Aries, then as Mars moves back. This is a really powerful point. This is a very potent point. At this point, Mars is going to be in exact opposition to the Sun, who at the time will be over there in Libra. Why is this important? Well, many of you will be familiar with the moon cycle that we go through every month. Well, all of the planets have these relationships to the Sun, just like the moon does. The lunar cycle is essentially charting the relationship between moon and sun, feminine and masculine. All of the planets also have this relationship to the sun. We are in a solar system. The sun sits at the center. So it's really, really super important. The relationship between Mars and the sun, this, whereas the moon takes around about a month to complete the cycle with the sun, a synodic cycle with the sun, Mars takes 2 years. It's a really, really, really long time for Mars to complete a whole journey with the sun. And it creates this journey, it does this same journey in the same part of the sky 7 times over the period of 15 years. And that creates this 7-pointed star, the septagram. And if you book a Mars reading with me, I can go into more detail about that with you. But essentially, this is the phase of the Mars cycle where Mars is extremely challenged. This is like the full moon point of the Mars-Sun cycle. So it's that potent culmination and crisis point of the Mars-Sun cycle. So if you're interested in tracking the Mars cycle, it's incredibly powerful work. If you're interested in doing that, watch out. Next week I'll be launching a new Mars cycle reading that can really explore how that works along with Joseph Campbell's monomyth, the hero's journey idea of how the Mars cycle works alongside that. But this is a very, very key point in that cycle. The Mars cycle essentially being where we are called to find our courage in some area of life. We're being called to face our fears, our deepest, darkest fears, to go into the places where we probably feel very afraid. But somehow we know that if we can look at those shadows, if we can face the monster that lies within that cave, that we will come out very much fundamentally changed, matured. You know, this is where it's like a rite of passage where we go from being an adolescent and into an adult. Okay, it's very much shaping the personality, who we are. And with Aries, you know, we have to be a warrior. That there are times in life when we need to know we have our own back. Okay, and we need to know that we have the strength to see that through, and we have the courage to see that through. And these crises are what give us that sense and put us in touch with those aspects of ourselves that allow us to do that. So it's really, really, really important. This is going to be, therefore, a really, really potent point in the retrograde. So just watch out for that and really, really try, whatever's showing up in your life, try and look at it as a call for you to face some kind of inner fear or to be courageous in some way. And that doesn't mean foolhardy. It doesn't mean taking a risk. It means having the courage to do the right thing. Okay, you know, Aries, it's not just the warrior, it's the hero. You know, this is your call to be your own hero, essentially. So see what crops up at that time. It's likely to be, there's likely to be some treasure that you can unearth there. And if you need help working that out, then of course get in touch and I can look at your chart and give you some pointers. And you may even find there's some repeat themes that come up that were showing up in your life 15 years ago when Mars would have gone retrograde in the same part of your chart. So you might be able to identify a pattern, you know, and that can be helpful too. So we've gone all the way back to the 21 degrees. So that's October the 14th, all right? 21 degrees Aries is the Mars-Sun opposition point on October the 14th. Then on Mars continues back, goes back to 19 degrees of Aries is where it will now come into the square aspect with Jupiter, who has also now gone direct. Okay, so these guys are now starting to, as they turn direct, each one, they're starting to put things right. Okay, they're starting to, we've unearthed all the weaknesses. We've exposed, particularly with Pluto's exposed, what's wrong with the current system, what's wrong, where are the cracks, where are the weaknesses, where are the things that really need our attention within our structure. And now it's a time when we say, okay, they're going direct again, here's where we can put things right, here's where we can take the steps to really kind of correct the things that have come to our attention during the first half of 2020. And beyond when it comes to with Pluto. Pluto's been in Capricorn since 2008, so there's been, there's a very drawn out financial crisis that's kind of been very stagnant, and I'll talk more about that in another video. But yeah, so here we have 19 degrees Mars coming into that square again with Jupiter on October the 18th, okay? Mars then finally moves back to 15 degrees of Aries. This will be the station direct. This will take place on November the 14th. This is such a long, long transit. Mars will station direct. So again, going to be hanging out at 15 degrees of Aries for a really long time. A good few days. So this is going to be one of those degrees that really gets some deep attention from Mars. So look out for that one. Okay, so now Mars is direct again, and we're entering the third phase. So this is the post-retrograde shadow. Things aren't quite, it's not quite over yet. There really are three distinct phases to pay attention to. At this point, Saturn and Jupiter are really speeding up. So they're not going to get a third hit, actually. They are moving on into Aquarius. And that's a big deal. That's also for another video. The Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, or the grand conjunction, as many astrologers are calling it, that's going to take place in December. But as Mars stations direct and starts to move into the post-retrograde shadow phase, it's going to just square with Pluto. That's going to be the only planet that we get this third square with. Again, it's that really deep, powerful, transformative work on the self. This is going to be super powered for a couple of reasons. So this is going to take place on December the 21st. And for those of you who are familiar with the Wheel of the Year, you will know this is the solstice point, the winter solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere. So what's happening at that point is the Sun entering the sign of Capricorn, a very powerful and potent point energetically for all of us. So that's a very powerful day to have this, this square occurring. So we'll be looking out for that. The other thing that's going to be happening is this is when we have the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in the sign of Aquarius, and that's a really big deal too. So this third and final both direct hit of the Mars-Pluto square there, this is really powerful, and this leads me to kind of wrap up now. You'll be glad to know. As always, I do talk forever, but it's, it's so important. I really want you to get the best out of this transit. So the questions really then are as follows. These are the questions I want you to ask yourself throughout the Mars retrograde. These are the pertinent questions that I feel we're being called to ask. Obviously, if you've got other planets and points being pulled into this, we can work with that on a one-to-one basis as well, and I can give you some ideas around, you know, where a more personal and specific call is. But in general, what we need to be asking is, what part do I play or have I played in the current situation that we find ourselves, in our current place in terms of our societal structure? Okay, what's the part that I've played in that? We've had these potent eclipses. We've had 2 years now of eclipses, and all of our attention being drawn to Capricorn and Cancer. Cancer is our family. It's also our history. And certainly what I've witnessed with my clients throughout this period of time, with the North Node moving through Cancer and trying to move us in a direction that's more, has more empathy, more care. It's really been asking us to connect more deeply with the wider family, you know, not just the bloodline, but also the bloodline itself, in terms of, you know, not just the immediate family we have now, but, you know, what about our ancestors? What about our lineage? Where did we come from? How many generations back is actually going through my veins, the blood pumping around my system right now? And I've experienced a lot of people feeling very, very drawn to investigate their history, investigate their roots and their ancestry in this time, to understand, you know, the bigger DNA family that they come from, you know, and what their own personal history is. And again, this is one of these ideas that we've really had our faces pushed into recently, our collective history, as, you know, the energies in Capricorn have really been about karma. It's really been about, you know, we've been reaping what we've sown, essentially, with this, with the, you know, the South Node and all of these powerful, powerful planets exposing, you know, aspects of this in not too great a way. Things that have been brushed under the carpet. Where has our history been distorted? Pluto up there is where things have been deceptive and manipulated, and, you know, where there's been an abuse. You know, this is Pluto energy when it's in, you know, it's less harmonious influence. So, you know, we've really had this spotlight thrown on us. So when we have Mars and the very personal aspect to this, this is saying, okay, where do you come from? Where do you and your lineage play a part in this current situation? And what are you going to do about it? You know, where's your sense of responsibility? Because you're going to be someone's ancestors one day too. Someone's going to be looking back on you. And what are they going to look back at? What are they going to see? You know, are you going to be someone that stands out of your family tree as someone, you know, that was courageous and brave and did the right thing and made a difference in the world, you know? Or are you going to be, you know, someone that kind of fades into the background and lets things happen around them? You know, what do you want to be? You know, Capricorn's all about responsibility. So the personal sense of responsibility is a massive part of this. So that first question, what part do I or have I played in this? Where have I taken action or not taken action, which is, in a paradoxical kind of way, taking action? And what are the implications of both? Where have I taken action and where have I chosen not to take action? And what are the consequences of that? You know, these planets up here are really dealing with consequences and responsibilities. Every action and every inaction has a consequence. It's a choice. You know, it's a choice to do something, it's a choice to not do something. And they're both very, very powerful. How does this change who I am going to be going forwards? This is the key question, particularly when we get to this very last point, when we get to the winter solstice, when we have Mars squaring Pluto and it's about this deep fundamental change, when we have Saturn and Jupiter starting this brand new cycle in Aquarius, you know, the sign of the future, the sign of progress and the tribe and equality and, you know, inventiveness and just doing things differently, doing things in a brand new way. You know, I think this is a powerful moment in time where we can really make this choice of who am I going to be. So there's going to be an aspect of unpicking, you know, and that's the whole point of a retrograde. It's an unpicking. Okay, who do I not want to be? How do I not want to act? Where have I taken actions that I don't want to? All of these things, it's kind of like just observing the self, observing where you feel like you need to do something, or feeling like, you know, you're being really, really super triggered. Okay, what's that all about? Just really, really get to grips with understanding it. And then really making this dedication at this time to say, do you know what? I'm going to handle myself better going forwards, and I'm going to own my stuff. I'm going to own myself. I think that's the real key thing to this. This is powerful, powerful energy to work with. And we're really going into an exciting year from this point onwards. Mars won't have completely finished up the journey until we move into January, but that's kind of the final real like peak point that I wanted to cover with you today. So yeah, right from now in June through to January of 2021, we're really working very, very closely with Mars, whether we're aware of it or not. So make the choice, get in touch with me if you would like some closer, more personal instruction on how to use this energy. Be aware of some of the downsides that can happen with Mars, and just look out for that if it's hitting any of your planets and angles. And I wish you the very, very best. As always, thank you for watching. Please like, please comment, please share, and definitely please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm really trying to grow that presence now, and so that I can reach more people and empower more people with astrology. So thank you very much. Lots of love. Goodbye.